Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Tier 2 EU and CIS Awards, a content piece by Dweg that for some reason I'm hosting because apparently you all know that you could do the introductions yourselves.
Yeah. You know what? I'll give it to you, Jay, because you know what? I'm going to bang you out in this show, so I'll get my credit there.
As if there's like a scorecard we're keeping or anything on
the
this
viewers
one,
might.
Maybe the viewers might. You never know. Let me know what you guys are going to pick for your particular awards in the comment section and on Twitter, of course. We are doing the award show for the second year running. Last year we did this one online.
Yes.
Because we couldn't do it at home for various reasons that you may or may not be aware of. A small little thing going on in the world that still's going on at the moment. I mean, we're still doing lands and stuff.
Yeah,
and we can be back in the studio. We're suited and booted, you know. Like we're looking pretty dapper today, mate.
Yeah, I think this is the way forward. You know, every year try and get it involved. Maybe even next episode we might be able to get a third guest involved. Maybe we'll see what opportunities there are. And
I'm not saying anything.
Yeah, but
I'm not saying anything.
Right,
but
should we jump in?
Let's jump in,
Yeah.
mate. So you came up with a bunch of different topics last year that you wanted to talk about in terms of the Tier 2 space. And this year you come up with a few more as well that we can do. So let's start off the show, I think, by just talking about like what kind of awards we're giving out today.
Yeah, I mean, they're all different categories. I think to start off, it's going to be mainly player awards, some of the guys that really impressed us this year, and then we'll start getting into some of the teams. We'll look into some content creators, some upcoming talent. We've got some kits coming into there, some roster moves. So, I mean, there's a vast majority of sort of topics and awards that we're going to be giving out. But I think overall, focusing on that Tier 2 landscape and obviously some of the individuals that have really taken a shine this year.
Awesome. Well, let's just kick things off by jumping into our first award. And you had down the Young Player of the Year,
Yes.
Greg. You wanted to highlight some of the newer breakthrough talents that have started to come up in the scene here in 2021. So let's start there. Let's start there with that side of things. Like, who have you got down as your second and first places for... Actually, you know what? Let's do this. Second place each and then first place each.
Is that what we're going to go for?
Should we do that?
Yeah.
So let's do that. Okay.
Let's do that.
So
All right.
second place for you as Young Player of the Year.
Yeah, I've gone for Monacy from Navi Junior. I mean, obviously this guy, 16 years old, he's had a great year. For him, the one aspect of maybe why I didn't put him in first is just because he hasn't played a massive amount, only 104 maps this year so far, but I mean, an average of a 1.36 rating. This guy's just fantastic, and it really does look as if going to be the next prodigy to come up into Tier 1. This was a guy I think we talked about in last year's show as well, briefly. This year he's been even better. And for someone like him, you can just tell that the goods are there for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I had down Ziffon as as the guy from Copenhagen Flames that came forward and was able to be his main element, and my second place pick went towards him, honestly. I just feel like that given the state of Copenhagen Flames throughout the course of the year and where they were able to go in terms of the major itself, the underdog level that they had, that's definitely a player that you want to look at and consider as one of the guys to give an award to when it comes to young players. Interesting that you put down Monacy as your second place, because he was my first place pick.
Yeah.
Because he's been talked about as being a Tier 1 call-up most of all, because I feel like he definitely did dominate in the Navi Junior side. I do have some concerns when it comes to where he can go in the future, but the fact that he's been rated so highly as to be picked up in a Tier 1 team, that definitely is, for me, one of those elements that you look at and think you've got to rate him pretty highly.
Yeah, you have to, right? I mean, that's why at least you've got him at 1 and 2. I think for me, he hadn't played a single map this year against a top 5 team or a top 10 team, and against top 20 teams, only 2 maps. So because of that, we've seen him kind of been playing the lower echelon Tier 2 teams, not really towards that higher end. I'm sure that's going to change next year, right? There's definitely going to be the case. But yeah, for my first pick, Jay, I'm actually going to go with Yabby from Copenhagen Flames. This is a guy that really last year didn't find a massive amount of success on Singularity and on Copenhagen Flames, but coming into this year, I think he's been fantastic. He put up a 1.06 rating against top 5 teams in the world, which is ridiculous. And the reason I've gone for him is because of the delivery of performance against higher tier caliber opposition. He's 18 years old. He's been a class player to come through for this Copenhagen Flames side. Second in the world, Jay, this year for most clutches won. Kind of shows everything of what he's capable of. And I think he's impressed a lot of people.
Yeah, I mean, those stats definitely are to be noted. And it's great that you pick Copenhagen Flames players as well.
Yeah,
given, again, the state of that particular team. Like, you have to give them their highlights. Yabby and Ziffon could both be considered as great players of their own right and great breakthrough prospects. So congratulations to them. Congratulations to Monacy for also winning 2 awards out of 4 today. So definitely got something over there in that Navi Junior camp. Congrats to all teams and all players, I should say, from the young players category. So veteran players category, going from the young to the old, although I do admit that probably 30 is very disastrously old at this particular particular stage in the Counter-Strike space. This one is to honour the veteran players that may or may not have been at the Tier 1 space, may or may not have just been around Counter-Strike for a long time in general, who definitely are advanced in their playing careers and have had their deliveries in the Tier 2 space. Second place for you, Dwayne?
Yeah, I've actually gone... So this whole category is 26 and above. So we could have some older guys coming in. I'm going to go with Oscar straight away. I know that this guy, you know, played at Tier 1 in the past, but when I look at who he's played for and what caliber of teams he's playing for, you can definitely put him in that Tier 2 category for this year. This guy's been an absolute menace. He's been fantastic. Fourth in the world for KD difference, coming through for fourth in the world for most clutches won, and fifth for AWP kills per round. You know, lighting up those stats line. He's 30 years old. I think last year we saw some slight stints from him on Sprout and Selector. Struggling with consistency, came up on this center side. I think he joined in about December 2020, and I mean, what an unbelievable year he has been able to have.
I do love how you picked all your second place teams as second place awards my first place.
Oh, just got him.
Stolen all my first place content. Yeah, I do have Oscar as my personal first place pick. We'll get to that in a second, because my second place actually went to Forest. Because he's been a veteran who's been around the space for the longest time ever, competing in 1.6, competing here in Global Offensive, part of that NIP roster, and now playing with Dignitas. And the cool thing about Forrest is that he's maintained consistent form at a high level for a long time. Like, I don't know how he does it, mate. Like, he's been such a wild individual. And seeing him sort of have his moments and still be competitive, even in this Dignitas side. Yes, they're not competing at Tier 1 anymore, but they're still holding a place in the Tier 2 scene. Maybe not a top place in the Tier 2 scene, but they're doing work here. And Forrest has always been one of those leaders. I was umming and ahhing between him and Freiburg quite a lot, because I feel like that whole duo sort of like thing is a bit of a weird scenario. But I feel like just Forrest is arguable GOAT candidate. I feel like that this is going to add to his legacy, even though he's not competing at the high level anymore.
Yeah, there's a few, I mean, I say there's a few, there's actually quite a lot of Tier 1 players that have dropped down to these kind of divisions and haven't quite been able to find that spark. I think Oscar and Forrest are guys that have really been able to deliver towards the higher echelons. For my first pick, I'm going to go with Roy on Copenhagen Flames. I think this was a guy, although he's been around for a very long time, he's in the peak of his career. And to think that he's 28, he's delivering at this kind of a caliber is just a perfect sight to see. I think it helps that the duo between him and Hooksy is back together. These guys played in the past when it came to Mad Lions. There was good chemistry there. They came together to come up with Copenhagen Flames, and this guy's just been fantastic. On LAN, 25 maps this year, average of a 1.17 rating. Really impressive at the major, and just overall fourth in the world for most damage per round on a yearly basis. So I think for Roy, best year I've seen from him personally yet, and I think he's going to really deliver going into next year as well.
I can't argue with you too much on that particular front. Roy definitely, again, has been one of those players for Copenhagen Flames that has elevated them to their level. I'm seeing repeating patterns for all the players involved. That's 3 awards for Copenhagen Flames already at this particular stage. For me, in my first place pick, I went towards Oscar, because for my side of things, I take a look at where Sinners were at the start of the year and where they've ended at the end of the year. And they might not have been a top Tier 2 contender, but they got pretty damn close.
They did.
And you take a look at where the roster moves happened and when Oscar came in, it literally is a correlation towards when they started to have their rise. So I looked towards that, and I looked at that whole idea, and I feel to myself that this is probably a good roster move in general. Actually, probably one of the arguably bigger roster moves in terms of the year itself. I mean, that's definitely a contender right there. But in terms of the player himself, he's definitely been the guy essentially for this squad.
Yeah, I think next one to jump right into, most improved player of the year, and I had a bit of fun with this one, because to me, when I look at this category, it's okay. I'm looking at last year, and I'm maybe looking at a couple of years before. How much of a jump am I really going to see? And I'm actually going to go with Glowing here as my second pick. The guy that plays up on 1win. Now, he was an individual that started making his debut on HLTV in 2018. He's 28 years old, so he's definitely more towards that older side. 2018, 16 maps played. Didn't really get to see much from him at all. 2019, started getting in with those seized lineups. We saw him on Cyber Legacy and BepZ and Trident. And I was like, all right, this guy's okay. Last year, 1.06 rating. 2020, it wasn't really that great for him, even on those lineups. 84 maps played, 0.97 rating. All right, what's he made of? He joins this 1win side, and things just crack open. This guy, 1.12 rating this year. He's really come into his own. 1win are a team that maybe don't compete to the highest caliber of competition, but just to see his growth, he joined, when he was part of the Cyber Legacy, they were 65th in the world at their peak. When he was a part of Trident, 49, joined one win, they got up to 27th in the world. So it just shows the progression that he's been able to make to these lineups.
Yeah, absolutely. And CIS talents in general this year and the last year as well, actually, for that matter, like, they've all been all over the place, which is why actually my second place is another CIS talent as well. We're very similar in terms of our picks. Deco is the guy that I go with on this one.
What a king.
Again, as you mentioned, comparison to last year versus this year, he was anywhere near last year. Like, he was not a player that anyone was looking at all. And he comes in, he joins the one-win side this year, and he's banging everybody out. Oh my God! You look at his HLTV page and all of his ratings on events. He's got 1.4, 1.3, 1.2, 1.5, 1.4 again. It's absolutely mad stuff from him. Like, just from an individual raw numbers perspective, Deco is a madman.
Yeah, I think last year he played like 6-7 maps on HLTV, and that was his debut last year. He's come into 2021, and he's been one of the hottest prospects of the entire year. So yeah, I think Deco's a prime pick to come through in a category like this. For most improved player of the year, I'm actually going to go with Dreamer, that got the chance of playing on Fiend this year. And the reason for that, Jay, I think you've got to get into a bit of a storyline with someone like Dreamer. When he came into the scene in 2014, this guy looked to be the next prodigy from Bulgarian CS. He was hitting everything. He was an unbelievable talent. He got vaxxed in 2014, and I think that did hurt the career slightly. 2015 was a very good year. 2016 was a very good year. Even 2017 was a very good year for Dreamer. And then things start falling downhill really quickly. 2018, he played 26 maps on HLTV, just filling in for a couple of teams here or there. 2019, 6 maps played on HLTV for a guy that was a breakout player in Bulgaria. 2020, he was playing with that Skin Ogres side in a couple of the real low-tier Bulgaria, or the low-tier events that were being held on HLTV, filling in with Blue Jays a couple of moments. And then, all right, Voivoda, that whole sort of Fiend lineup coming together. The day that Fiend played their first official was the day that Valve changed their ruling on VAC players, and Dreamer for the first time had now been able to play in the Valve events, in the RMRs, in the majors. Since that point, 1.14 rating this year, he has just skyrocketed up. 1.05 rating against top 5 teams in the world. Just when you think about how high it was to a drop down, and then to be like, right, like, I can compete at these events again. He's just been unbelievable. He is such a great talent, and I really hope he gets a good home going into next year, because he's been fantastic to watch.
Yeah, it kind of sucks for the Fiend side as well, knowing that this is their first major cycle, and obviously they had their run at the last RMR. They almost made it in. They lost out to Copenhagen Flames, and how differently we could be talking about all of our past awards.
Definitely.
If maybe Fiend had made their way into the major itself. Yeah. So I guess for Dreamer, definitely a big year for him, and definitely one of the more improved guys. For me, in my first place pick, I went to the likes of Mezzi, which might be my UK bias speaking there, but I also feel like, again, you compare where he was last year. He was on that Game Legion side for the most of it. Was able to do some decent work there, but he wasn't definitively like a tier 1 player. He got that call up to Cloud9. That didn't go so well, and he got back to Endpoint. He bombed out on Endpoint. He absolutely destroyed everybody once again, and he was only a support player, by the way. Should be noted about that role stance, and he's still putting numbers up like a god, essentially, and now he's on this Fnatic cab where he's having an absolutely ball of a time. I think that, honestly, Mezzi is one of the elements that raised Fnatic out of tier 2 and back into tier 1 for me.
Yeah, I mean, for Mezzi, right, like, at least when you think about the caliber of teams that he's been playing from, there's definitely improvement there. Whether the statistics and the numbers tell all the picture, probably not, but just knowing the progression that's come through from the ranks, and obviously finding himself on Fnatic now, and I think he's going to be comfortable in that higher echelon for quite a while.
Indeed. There you go. Well, there you go. Those are the player categories all done. Our highlight players, our most improved players, our veteran players, our overall players, all given the thumbs up here on that one. So now we move to our match categories. Maybe you wanted to highlight some of our matches.
I've still got one more. Still got one more. Best player of the year. We still got one
yes, we do. Yeah. Wow.
The one that's the most important here.
The one that's the most important.
Yeah.
I can't believe that. I'm an idiot.
Come on, Jay. Aren't you doing the hosting here?
I am doing the hosting. Yeah. Sorry. That's on my bad. Right. Player of the year. Who have you got as second place?
Yeah, I struggled with this one, honestly, because there is a lot of good candidates to take from, and I think you have to be quite open-minded with who you choose, having a look at some of the LAN performances against higher opposition, how many maps they were able to play this year. I'm actually going to go with Farfan as my second pick over on Sprout. This guy, 37 events played this year, 34 of them with a positive rating. He was able to really push himself in the online era, a 1.18 rating across nearly 300 maps played this year, and an average of a 1.14 rating against top 5 teams. So definitely a guy that maybe Sprout isn't the highest of contenders, but this guy definitely is. He's been able to put a lot of big numbers up when it comes this entire year.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, I didn't quite look at the Sprout side as too much of a big name in terms of this year itself, just because I didn't really consider any of those players personally. I do see where you come from in that particular front, though. There's definitely some impressive stats.
As well, like, he's 34th highest ranked player of the year, which doesn't feel very high. You've got a lot of tier 1 guys in there, and AWPers. Farfan's not an AWPer. Yeah, he might pick up the secondary AWP from time to time, but he's a rifler. And when you look at some of those ratings, literally everyone towards that higher echelon is an AWPer.
Absolutely. So credit to him for being able to defy the odds, if you will, in that particular respect. For me, I actually went with a bit of a different angle. Again, my UK bias might be playing into this one, but I had Smooya as my second place. The main reason I was umming and ahhing between putting Mezzi and Smooya in the most improved or the best player category, because I feel like that they both had incredible years thus far. The main thing that made me put Smooya in best players because I don't think he's improved. I think he's always been an amazing player for the last handful of years, and this year especially he proved it a lot. That Movistar Riders run, he was by far and away the best player. I established that probably was a bad idea letting him go from that particular roster. I guess it has worked out overall for Movistar Riders, but by logical state, you take a look at that move from the outset, and you think to yourself that shouldn't really make sense. But Smooya, he's dominated tier 2, absolutely. One of the best tier 2 players that we've had come into the tier 1 space now, and he's doing all right on Fnatic as well. Like, they've done, they didn't do that well at their first LAN, but the online stages, they were looking exactly like Gambit were looking. First places in all the Dream Hacks, all the online cups, all the qualifiers and everything like that. And Smooya has been a big part of that for me. So I look at him and rate him as my second best player of the year.
The one issue I would have with that one is we haven't seen Fnatic take the top end teams just yet. Like, that is a conversation, but overall I think his performance on Movistar, his performance on Fnatic so far defies expectations. Like, he's doing very well.
Well, that's why I didn't put him as a first place. That's why he's my second place guy. So he gets the silver medal in that particular respect. Is that reason why? My first place pick.
We've both got the same.
I think we've both got the same guy. Yes. Do you want to say it, Doig?
Elian?
Yes,
of course, mate. This guy has just had an unbelievable year again, and he just continues to impress. 43 events when it comes to the whole Winstrike, ex-Winstrike, EPG family, Entropic, the whole sort of clan tag, the whole team. 41 of those 43 positive rating. He has the highest KD difference out of anyone this entire year at nearly positive 2,000 KD. The thing that impresses me the most, Jay, is he's averaged online a 1.23 rating, 410 maps. Like, a ridiculously big amount of Counter-Strike. The only teams that come close to that are like the Lingby guys, Skade, and Sinners. Everyone else is just dropping so hard with the maps played. So to keep that kind of a number up when you're playing that many games is unbelievable.
And you consider as well, when just the number, you've mentioned out Lingby Vikings and teams like that have played that number of maps. They have never had anyone that's gone quite as ham as he has.
Definitely not.
I think there was a saying that someone mentioned about how the CIS teams make hay while the sun shines. Elian is the pure embodiment of that. Like, playing loads of maps, delivering every single time. Like, you can't really argue against that. My tier 2 player of the year by far and away. Earned it wholeheartedly. You can't really argue it, and that's the reason why we both had it down as we didn't even need to think, we didn't even need to say it beforehand. We definitely just had just that idea that we definitely had the exact same pick for that.
I think without a doubt he's the king of tier 2. Like, when we look at just an individual standpoint, he puts crazy numbers up, and even on LAN, he's played 27 maps on LAN, a 1.18 rating, and that's like talking about like the major event, the one that he played at V4 where they came second. We're talking about decent caliber opposition, and this guy still bangs them out of the water.
Indeed, he does. So great to him. Congratulations to Elian for being player of the year, and that really does conclude our player categories at this particular stage. We move to match categories now.
Yes.
You wanted to highlight some big matches of the year to start things off. You decided that you wanted to give a match of the year award out for this one, so give me your second place.
Yeah, I think when I look at a category like
this...
Actually,
before we do, key thing to mention, there are a lot of matches to pick from, so if your favourite didn't get in or didn't get a mention...
There's a lot of matches.
Don't worry about it. Like, the hundreds of matches played every week. So
for us, we've casted 900 maps this
year. Like,
so.
There's no way that we can remember every single one of our matches, let alone ones that have taken place in the course of the entire year. So, give me your second place pick.
Yeah, I'm actually going to go with a Snow Sweet Snow 3 matchup, which was ex-Winstrike versus Mouse Sports in the grand final. Now, we casted that game. I think what was really good from a storylines perspective, it was obviously ex-Winstrike every single map that they'd won in the main Swiss and the Plus, they didn't even drop a map. Like, they were so dominant up to that point. Mousesport's obviously Tier 1 team. They're going to get invited into those quarterfinals. And we have a look at the final and, like, how much of a cracker it was. Mousesports ended up winning 25-22 on Nuke and then 19-17 on Dust 2. We had overtimes in both maps. Both teams really gave it their all. Unfortunately for X-Winstrike, they weren't able to be able to get that win forward. But it felt for me, because it was so early in the year, it's like, right, Tier 2, like, these guys can show up against some of the Tier 1 teams. And just from an entertainment perspective, the way the match panned out, how many storylines there were going into it, that came for my second.
Absolutely. I mean, I can't really argue against that particular side of things. Definitely was a high-rated match. For me, my second place actually came from the Elisa Invitational Summer.
Yep.
Where we had the Bulgarian derby of Fiend versus Skade. Now,
honestly, it's not even just out of it. Any time there's a Fiend versus Skade game, it's just
But this one's special because you remember that ancient map with that ridiculous Han 4K that, of course, made the front page of Reddit and
then it was
everything.
Like the clutch after.
Yeah, where I lost my balls in that particular screen. For very memorable moments is where I sort of went for my picks in terms of the matches themselves. So that's the reason why that one in particular out of that derby gains it. And ultimately, like, you know, as you mentioned before, Fiend versus Skade, always a riot.
It's always good. Always good. Any derbies, to be honest, like a CIS derbies normally delivers, and especially when it's like
actually,
a playoff
my first
game.
place pick is also a CIS derby as well. So.
Well, the one I've gone for, unfortunately, Jay, you weren't here to cast it. I had Trav coming in with me to cast this one.
Oh, yeah, I Am Winter, or I was ill.
I Am Fall, it was, for the
Fall,
RMR, yeah.
Same
thing. That was obviously Copenhagen Flames versus Fiend, and I think for this game, what brought so much to it is a storylines perspective again. We had two teams, one winner, make the major. Like, as simple as that. 7th place decider, whoever wins this game, make the major. For someone like Bubble, I think this was his 6th best of 3 that he needed to win once, and he'd be in the major. And every single time, it just didn't come through. So, because of that, I looked at this game and I was like, Bubble, he's going to do it. He's finally going to do it. He's going to push through. Because, unfortunately for him, all the Bulgarian teams he was a part of that typically had Dreamer, they always had a stand-in when it came to the minor to try and get through. And they always got so close and never got there. And we come into a game where we're getting OT on Inferno, 28-25. We go into Nuke as well, 19-16. We're seeing double AWPing from Han and Red Star just absolutely popping off. We've got, I think, 9 clutches from Copenhagen Flames on the last map, which was Inferno, and it was just an absolute bang. I mean, Bubble accidentally bought like an M249 at one point, and there was just a lot going on. You know, it's on land, there's high pressure, and for Copenhagen Flames, winning that game got them into the major.
Yeah, I mean, listen, if I was casting that, I'd probably be alongside you on that particular front.
Unbelievable. I think it was like 4 hours for 2 maps. It was just such a long game.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, hell, I don't think I would have enjoyed it at the time. I definitely would have looked back at it and given it a nomination at this particular stage. So congratulations to those guys for taking their Dweg's match of the year. My match of the year came down to a CIS derby between EPG Family and Forza in Spring number 1.
Yeah.
That was the grand finals of that particular tournament.
Yeah.
And you remember...
I think Forza won that one, I'm pretty sure. 2-1, I think it was.
Yeah. It was a very, very down-to-the-wire thing. And ultimately, like, you know, CIS derbies always prove a decent position. And also, you talk about, like, obviously how EPG Family were picked up by Entropic a couple months later.
Yeah.
Like, they had... I think that was one of their landmark moments that really proved that they're a team that could really hold their own. Even
they
though
made
Forza,
a lot of finals.
Yeah, they made a lot of finals, and this was one of them. And it also had one of those other moments, because you remember the pistol 1v3 in the apartments. Nickelback,
yeah.
the man himself. What a hero,
yeah.
what a legend, what a king. And that was just truly one of the best moments. That was a great clutch. Got, again, front page Reddit. Definitely had... everyone who follows my Twitter will know that's one of the highest rated reaction clips that we've ever had posted.
It was just like, it was the way that it just all came through. It was a perfect moment. It really was. To be in that kind of an environment too for that stage of the tournament and to know it was a final, no doubt at all.
Absolutely. There you go. Congratulations to those boys for winning my nomination. Upset of the year, Dwayne. Who you got?
Yeah, this was a tough one. My second pick was actually one that happened quite recently and one that you and I casted. Eternal Fire beating VP in the round of 16 of Republic Season 2. And the reason for that, VP have just come off their major run. They've made top 8 of the major. They made quarterfinal status. They're 7th in the world 1 week after that game against Heroic. They're taking on Eternal Fire, who are just losing to everyone. Yeah. Honestly,
What was it, like top 50 in the world at that point or something?
They were 53rd.
53rd, yeah.
And I think a few weeks before, they were on like a bit of a winning streak, but it was like a couple of Turkey teams. Like, it wasn't really high caliber caliber competition. A few weeks ago, they were on a 7-game losing streak. They lost to FPX, Skade, Saw, Vizsla, Fnatic, Forza Fiends, and I was like, come on, these guys are going to get smoked out of the water. And they actually managed to get a massive victory, 2-1. I think it was like 16-14 on the last map. But to think that VP had just come off quarterfinals at a major and they lose to Eternal Fire, that is a massive upset.
I mean, I can't disagree with you on that front. I have to give it to them. I feel like that was probably a thing I wasn't expecting either myself.
No,
Like I was sat there casting that match as well, and that was we just had like the Tunnel Fire. I was like, there's no way they should do it, and they have had a bit of a resurgence thanks to that. They made a pretty deep run in Republic overall, thanks to that upset. And we thought they weren't going to go so far as to beat out Virtus Pro. So congratulations to Eternal Fire in that respect, not only for that win but also for that tournament run in general. I went a little bit more closer to home on my personal upset of the year. My second place victory, my second place pick was 777 beating out Fiend in the Elite Invitational.
Those Norwegians, man. What a tournament.
I mean, you talk about good tournament runs from Eternal Fire. Same thing with 777. They made it to the top 8 of that by being the lowest ranked team in the entire regional Swiss stage. And that particular matchup, even though they beat out Harvu, who technically were kind of like a higher rated team at that particular time, the big shocker was that whole Fiend result because no one, and I mean no one, had them beating Fiend. You could have seen an angle for Harvu given how they were in at that particular up and down scenario in that particular point in time. Fiend, though, they were solid, they were rock hard, and they were amazing at that particular time. So seeing that upset,
that a lot of upsets that event.
A lot of upsets at that event, and that was one of the bigger ones.
Yeah, I mean 777, that one event, unfortunately for them, was like the one that really kicked off. Everything else didn't really happen towards that same caliber. They made a lot of upsets that event, so definitely getting a mention in for them.
That's why I've got it as second place, though, because had they made it another run in the Elite Invitational, had they done more in Malta Vibes or Pinnacle Full Series or whatever else they were playing at the time, then maybe that could have given them a first place position for me. But I have a bit more context around my first place pick.
Definitely.
Who do you have?
Yeah, I'm actually going to go for Movistar Riders versus G2 in the 5th place decider of IM Full again for the RMR on LAN. You could have the caveat that everyone's qualified for the major at that point. I don't personally. I think Movistar Riders played fantastically in that event. They were ranked 24th at the time. G2 were 4th, and somehow Movistar Riders were able to get a 2-1 victory. It was 16-14 on Ancient, that last map of the series, and with that there was a massive 1v3 clutch that came through from Sun Pius. And just the player cams after they got that win, like you could just see how much it means to them. That was a really incredible match to come in. Sun Pius had a great game overall, and just to think that you're beating a team like G2 in a BO3 on LAN, that's not easy at all.
Absolutely. I mean, credit to them. And you do have that caveat, though, which is the reason why it's not my personal one or number 2 pick. So it's a difference in terms of the mentality there. My number 1 pick actually has to go to Copenhagen Flames beating Gambit in the playoffs of Spring... Is it Snow Sweet Star? It's Snow Sweet Star, actually, number 2.
Yeah.
That was the very start of the year tournament. And
that was...
the reason... Go on.
No, I was just going to say, Cillian was still there, wasn't it?
Cillian
that was the sort of older lineup.
A much older lineup, and it still had a number of the players that we saw now. But in particular for the organisation, context is what matters, because not only did they beat Gambit in that matchup, they went on to beat them later on in the year in the Elite Invitational. And then you think about, as well as that, where Copenhagen Flames went from that point. They had their rise up to the Tier 2 space. They fell off a little bit, made some changes, then they rose back up again, and then they went into the major itself. So in terms of the overall context of where that upset puts them in the grand scale of CS, that's a massive thing for Copenhagen Flames.
I think it was like the only time that Gambit got upset in those like Tier 2 events, that in this year at least, and it was against Copenhagen Flames twice.
So, exactly.
Fair play to them, because they delivered. I think we casted both of those games actually of when the upset came through. So best team of the year, should we get into that one?
Yes, this is the best team of the year. Who's your second place?
Yeah, look, I think my first pick was kind of obvious, but my second one, I had to dive a bit deeper, and I actually gone with a team that maybe most people wouldn't go for, and actually go with Skade. Now, the reason for that is, even though right now they're maybe not in the absolute prime position, they played 10 grand finals this year. They won 7 of them. Like, this is a team that win events. And that was always the talking point we had with Skade when we had them in these Tier 2 Cups is, all right, maybe Fiend are playing better, or, okay, Copenhagen Flames doing really well. Skade win events. They go really deep. And for this team, they won over 200,000 USD this year, which is an incredible amount of prize money. The only times they'd lost in a grand final was against Furia, K23, and VP. Like, we're talking about 2 Tier 1 teams in that mix of who they lost to. And my God, they're an upset team, aren't
they are.
Like, how many times they beat top caliber teams? They beat Big twice, eliminated them. They beat Spirit when they were in prime form too. So yeah, I'm going to go for Skade for best team of the year for my second one.
I mean, for mine, I'm actually going to do a little bit of, I'm going to break the rules a little bit. I'm going to do both my first and second places because of the nature of the particulars as to why I picked them as my first and second places.
Right.
I've got Copenhagen Flames as second and then
Yeah.
Tropic as first.
Yep.
And the main reason is because they were the tier 2 teams that made the deepest run in at the PGL Major.
Yeah.
They both went to a similar position in terms of the Legend stage and Challengers, Legends, Champions. Yeah. So yeah, sorry, I can never get the new naming system right. The Legend stage, the second Swiss stage.
Yeah.
So they went deep alongside Copenhagen Flames. Copenhagen Flames are in second just because of the fact that obviously they've been up and down over the course of the year versus Entropic, who have been consistently good in the tier 2 space. Topping it up with that whole placement in the major makes them my personal team of the year.
Yeah, I'm going to disagree to an extent with Copenhagen Flames. Like, obviously, no doubt towards the end of the year, they've been fantastic. But for me, when I look at best team of the year, I look from January to December. And unfortunately for Copenhagen Flames, because they're an organisation that sell a lot of players, we have up and down periods with that team where we see them dip and then they come back, and then they dip and they come back. They've only won one event this year. And I compare that to someone like Skade, who's won 7. Now, again, maybe the peak towards the highest level is definitely different because you would probably rate Copenhagen Flames to be a stronger team than Skade. But I think longevity, when I look over the entire year, that's why I've gone with them. For my first pick, it's obviously Windstrike, ex-Windstrike, EPG family, Entropic, that whole team. Unbelievable. What a year these guys have had. 10 grand finals, winning 6 of them. The place in the major, you can't disagree with at all. Like, those guys did amazingly. To know that they got a grand final placing in V4 as well, on LAN, up against Gambit. And the only grand finals they lost was to Mouse Sports, Complexity, Forza, and Gambit. Every other grand final, they won it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And the second time we've been agreed on Entropic's player or team being in the top place position. So.
I mean, it makes sense because this team is good.
Yeah, they're probably one of the highlight elements of this particular year so far. So congratulations to them.
And as well, ranked 9th at the highest peak. So, like, to think you can get top 10 in the world and still be classified a tier 2 team, you're doing something right.
Absolutely. Congratulations to them. Best roster move of the year. We're kind of still sticking with it. I guess it's a team category to a certain extent. You know. Anyway, roster move of the year for you. Who's your second place?
Now, I looked at this one, and straight off the bat, there is a lot of roster moves that made teams go from a decent level to a championship level. Now, I haven't included that for a reason of I look at what progressed the team the most. You know, if you made a roster move, if you were a top 30 team and went to 20, it was a good roster move, but it wasn't the best for me. So I'm actually going to go with Blink here, the Albanian Kosovo team. They ended 2020 at 144th in the world. They added Drun Flatru and Cinespeed to come back to make a super team, really, because those guys were playing on Mix and Secret. They were playing the EU teams. They've come back in. They started their first official in March, about a month after they came to the team, and they were 82nd in the world, which is still incredibly low. They now sit at 25th, Jay. They have really been able to rise up, and it's because of those roster changes that we're seeing a massive gap from where they started the year to where they are today.
I'm kind of surprised you went down that route, actually, honestly. Like, because I was looking at that whole thing, I thought championship moves were probably on the table, honestly, for me.
Yeah, I just had a different outlook of the category.
I mean, it's credit to you. Like, it's definitely impressive for Blink in that respect. Unfortunately for me, they haven't really gone quite as deep as many of the other teams in the tier 2 space.
Definitely. I mean, like, peaking at 25th tells you that. And these guys have won a couple of LAN events, like that Giraffe for 50. The first one was a little bit more local. They even came second place at the one that had more international teams. And then you have a look at where they went. They came second in advance in Season 36, come Season 38 in Premier, third place. Like, when you just look at that and you look at the progression, these teams have been working really hard, and that roster move made a big difference.
Absolutely, credit to them. So congratulations to those guys. For me, my second pick is not very original. I went for the Entropic picking up EPG family just because, look, if you're going to pick up a full team, that's the team to go with. And Entropic come in with the move of the year for me because who were Entropic as the organisation prior to the pickup of their main roster? They had the Czech team, which they moved over to Entropic Prague, obviously, which obviously are still doing well in the national and regional space. But obviously for Entropic, like in terms of establishing their tier 2 presence, that is a massive move.
Yeah, and from what I know, they seem to like really know what they're doing. They got a fantastic like boot camp facility and team house that we've seen, and it was just the right team to pick up. Like, we knew these guys were good when they went as ex-Windstrike EPG family. They were there for what, maybe like 2 months, 3 months or so. They were still there for a decent amount of time before they got picked up. And for Entropic, I think that was a great signing. getting those players in.
Absolutely. Like, can you even argue with it? Like, there's no chance. It's always a good move. First pick for you.
I'm actually going to go with the Lingby Vikings ecstatic move of picking up Manx and Dafu. Now, again, the team recently, with the likes of Wolfie coming into the team, have done really well. The re-addition of Fasha, done very well. The reason I've gone with these two guys is bringing back that core. Now, we know that Bird from Sky, the in-game leader, has been a part of this team for so long now. He'd played with both Manx and Dafu, a part of Lingby Vikings in the past, in different iterations. Never really worked towards a higher level. These guys came signed when Lingby Vikings were 95th in the world, and now today they sit at 20th. Jay, these guys have been able to win events, they've got in towards grand finals, and I just think bringing that core of experience back of Bird from Sky, Manx and Dafu as that three, and then you've got a couple of interchanging parts, getting some roster moves here or there, but that three really pushed the team forward towards the end of the year.
Yeah, credit to them. I mean, I feel like you're probably banging the money with a lot of that in that respect. For me, however, my first place was definitely among that championship caliber move style of thing. So even though I do agree that in Tropic, from an organisation perspective, picking up a whole team to establish themselves as good, in terms of a championship move, Smoothie to Fnatic felt like the right move at the right moment for me. Just because, again, we mentioned before, he was one of the highest players of the year. My secondary pick back definitely blew out the water of the entire Tier 2 space. And ultimately...
Yeah, the one I have with that, is it too soon? Like, it only came very recently.
Here's the thing. I think it's an objective upgrade, because I didn't rate Joaquinho at all for Fnatic. I know that you disagree. I know that there's some part of the people that tend to like to give him a bit more credit. For me personally, it just wasn't working. And you can see what that's done with Fnatic now that they picked up Smoothie, played in all those open qualifiers, played in those online tournaments, and again, didn't have the greatest showing at the LAN event recently. But they still are looking like a decent squad. Now, I do think it's definitely going to take some time to get to where it should be. And that's the key thing as well. I think that this roster only gets better from here.
Okay. Again, maybe not the avenue of approach I come from, but I definitely see a point. I think the next one that we can jump into is worst roster move of the year. This is a one normally I like to have a bit of a fun with it, but honestly, this time around, there weren't that many that struck me. I think last year we definitely saw some ones out there that were eye-opening. But for this year, it actually struggled to find ones that I looked at and thought this just isn't right. For my second place, it's not exactly a bad roster move. It just didn't make sense to me, and it was the minus Yemi plus Yemi on Havu. What is going on there? So Yemi had been part of the team since December 2020. He got benched in June, and rather than getting someone from an SJ or a Kova or wherever, they decide to play with their coach for 2 months, not even have a single guy on trial play an official. Whether that happened in the scrims and the practice isn't information we know. The coach stood in for 2 months and averaged an 0.89 rating across 34 maps played. And then, you know what, Yemi, just come back. Like, what's going on there? If they at least trialed players and it didn't quite work and then they bring him back, I could understand that. The fact that he gets benched and comes back 2 months later with all the team has done is played with their coach, it just baffled me.
Yeah, that made me sort of think as well, actually, because, like, honestly, like, in the whole period of time for that whole move with Havu just made no sense whatsoever, honestly. Like, they really weren't doing well in terms of just like, a general performance level, let alone, you know, a roster placement and the roster itself, because they were playing without a fifth for, like, the longest time after Yemi's departure.
Well, it could be that they had someone and then something fell through, you know, there was contractual issues, but we just don't know that information.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, you can't rest that as, like, a hypothetical, because we don't actually know that. So
we have to go with what we know.
Yeah, we know what we know is that it was a terrible idea. So second worst roster move of the year for you. For me, my second worst roster move was Fiend dropping Bubble and Dreamer very recently. Now, it's second worst because we don't know how that's going to affect Fiend overall. What I do know is that they were supposed to be competing in ESL Challenger, and not having fielded a full roster. As a result of that move, they're not going to be competing in that. So already we're seeing setbacks from the Fiend side. Now, for me, I also look at in terms of the theoretical side of things and the complexion of the team. I thought Fiend were great. I thought they were absolutely fine. I know that they're trying to aim towards like a tier 1 position and trying to break in as a definitive tier 1 squad, try to break into that top 20, top 30 position. But I don't think this is the right move for it, because who else are you going to get?
Well, at the moment, Oxygen has been playing with them that played on Skade, and then Viltrex, who was like the sub that whenever someone was ill would fill in, he's playing with them as well. But I think you are right. The only issue I have with that is we haven't seen what the complications have been. It would have to be something you would imagine that's gone wrong in the team, whether it be fundamentals, the way that they look at playing the game. I don't know. But when you think about a team that just found so much success when it comes to 2021, it wasn't a move that was expected. That's for sure.
Kind of makes you wonder what happened at the V4 for LAN, because that was the last one where they competed as a true team.
Well, I mean, really, Skade, or at least Skade bringing ships over to help them out for the event, and then Bubble now playing with Skade. Is that, them getting together in the hotel, having a bit of a laugh, realizing, from what I heard as well, it feels like Ships didn't really want to call anymore, and he was the in-game leader for Skade, so it kind of makes sense for Bubble to move over there, start calling and allowing Ships to just be that superstar again. Overall, though, it was definitely a move that no one saw coming.
No, and definitely not a move that I think is going to benefit that particular team. Second place for me personally. What is your first place?
Yeah, I'm actually going to go with minus Arky and plus Story to come through from Saw. Now, this is a move that I can understand why they wanted to do it. Saw had been really on the downward slope when it came to this year, but it was picking up a youngster and a proper guy that had not played at this caliber of competition. Came over from the For The Win esports team. They put Arky, their Spaniard, down onto the bench, and while he was there, Story played 42 maps. Now, he's an AWPer, and what didn't really make sense with that move is they're not benching an AWPer, they're benching a rifler, and they're moving Stododo from AWP to rifle, and then they're picking up Story to AWP. 42 maps played, averaged an 0.93 rating, really was not able to find the success at that kind of a caliber. He lasted 2 months, and then got benched, and Arky came back. So it felt as if for Saw, they needed changes. They just didn't quite get the same player. They realized it didn't work and just went back to what they had originally.
Yeah, for Saw, it's a bit of a weird one for me because I'm not sure. Right now they're trying to re-establish themselves as a tier 2 team because obviously they're a bunch of very old individuals, very old players. So I guess maybe some roster moves are kind of justified for them in that respect because they're going to need to make a move in of their own.
Just maybe wasn't the right fit.
Yeah, I guess so. It doesn't feel like to me it's the worst roster move in the scene.
It was difficult to find them this year.
No, that's the thing, right? Yeah. There have been a lot of roster moves, but none of them definitely feel like they're bad per se. For me, my top pick was any move involving the Gorillas, just because of the travesty of that particular team. And I don't want to go into it too much in this particular topic because the next topic is going to expand on that a lot more as we go to our worst team, or most disappointing team of the year. I don't even want to pick... that could also be the case. I don't even want to pick a second place. We have to, because Blake mandated that we have to, just because of the nature of the fact that it's so far gone for that first place pick. For me, I went towards Harvu as my second place, mostly because of the fact that this is a team that at the start of the year, or towards the early part of the year, they were number 1 in the champion circuit. And their moves, and then their drop-off, and everything that surrounded that particular substance, well, obviously the Yemi thing you mentioned earlier, that made them fall off the edge of a cliff, and no longer are they anywhere near the top 10. I don't even think of that particular board.
No. For Harvu, I had them as well for my second place, Jay. This was a team that, as of the 26th of April this year, they were 14th in the world, which is ridiculously high. From the start of the year, they'd won the Eliza Nordic Championships, they'd won Snow Sweet Snow, they won a Pelajack event, the Blast Qual, they came second in, they came second in Pinnacle Cup, they won FunSpark Season 1. They did very well in a lot of these events, and then from April onwards, things just went downhill pretty quickly. Started continuing from April till the end of the year, they never reached a grand final of an A or B tier event again, which is just astounding for a team that was 14th in the world. They now currently sit at 52nd. So when we think about the heights that we had for Harvu earlier on to now where they are today, massive drop-off.
Well, speaking of massive heights expected for a team in the scene that didn't quite live up to it, Gorillas is my first place pick. I know it's your first place pick, Dwayne, because there's no other team. There's no other team. This is the Flusher Project, of course, the team that's kind of a mix, but kind of with an org, but kind of not. We don't know. It's not announced, but yes, but no.
They are orged. It's just that we don't know who it is.
Yeah, and I don't think we're going to know who it is, honestly, with the state that this team is currently in. As of this episode's recording, they are 91st in the world.
Very low.
And for a team of Flusher, JW, Sergey, Sonny, HS.
Big names.
These are big names. How the hell are they top 100?
Yeah, it's kind of ridiculous, right? This team formed together on the 12th of April this year, Jay. Have a guess how much prize money they've won this year.
Sweet FA.
$1,000. And an entire year. $1,000. We've just been talking about in Tropic. That whole team that's won $350K. They've won $1,000.
it's just so stunning to me, as well as that. Just take a look at the individual tournaments that they place in as well, and it's like nowhere near the top 8, nowhere near the top 16. Then they're just not there. And again, the reason why it's disappointing is not because of the team itself; it's because of the players involved. You've got multiple major champions in there. You've got players who rocked the tier 2 space like 2 years ago. Yeah. This is a squad that should be at least title contenders in all of these invitationals and tier 2 cups. But they're just not. No. And honestly, I'm going to level a bit of criticism at Flusher for this. I don't rate his in-game leading, like, at all. I just don't think it's good. Because the main thing is that when you get them on a Dust 2 or a Mirage especially, because that was their main pick, they pop heads and they win the map. Then you go to Nuke, Inferno, Overpass, 16-5 against them by, like, Masonic.
Yeah.
It's not even like it's a good style of Counter-Strike that was being played out by that particular team.
Yeah, it felt like there was a lot of issues with this team. I mean, even LMBT, their coach, has been a resounded name when it comes to the CIS scene. Coached Hellraisers, Mouse Sports, Vanguard, Forza. A lot of the names never really found success here at all. And for Gorillas, the one event where they got prize money, they were 24th to 26th in one of the Pinnacle Cups. So it was a Spring 2. And their best placement in, like, at all, in a decent event was the William Hill Cup, where they were invited into the quarterfinals and just got banged out straight away. So even that's not really a good placing. You come 5th, 6th, you got invited, and then you just got lost in the first game.
That's the thing, right? Whenever people say, "Oh, they came top 16 in the Malta Vibes tournament," right?
And then they got invited to top 16.
But they got invited to that stage. So it's contextually important to know where they entered in that particular tournament. Same thing for the William Hill Cup, because, like, just alive, it's not fun at all for this team. And we know obviously that Flusher's going to be leaving the team going forward. So there is, in theory, a way in which they would find a legitimate IGL, where they would become a decent squad. But I don't know if that's even going to be a thing going into 2022. Like, I think, honestly, this whole project might already be dead.
Well, there was a lot of good pieces when we look at the individuals again. Flusher, Sunny, Sergey with the, like, OG members of the team. We had Calix in there for a little bit. He made a name for himself on Space Soldiers, most known. You've got Esperanto, a guy that in sort of the tier 1.5, tier 2 teams always did very well. NATO Safix, very keen AWPer that wasn't even AWPing on this team. X-Flound, one of the sort of young Turkish players, he then moved over to Eternal Fire. You have HS. I mean, HS has always been a guy in Tier 2 that had been rated relatively highly, but never really found the success at the next sort of level up. Richie, a guy that I actually rated very highly when he was playing on EC Brugge. Unbelievable talent. Came into this team, just didn't find form at all.
It's funny as well, you list out all these great players, and it's like, do you think that in any number of those combinations you would find something for Gorillas, but it just didn't happen at all.
The highest rank they ever got on HLTV was 68, which, I mean, just is not high at all. It's a very low number. So
that's so bad.
Yeah.
Like, it just shocks me every time you list those numbers, because it's like, I think about all these players, and again, led by ex-Fnatic members who won majors and stuff. Like, it's just so shocking to me. And again, I don't know if this team has a future.
Yeah, only time will tell, really, what happens going into next year. At least they've made their way into, like, main Swiss of Alyssa, and that's it. But, like, we don't know. I think definitely most disappointing by far going into this year.
Absolutely. I mean, it's so much so we didn't even touch upon the Harvu thing. We just kind of brushed it off to the side.
I mean,
it is what it is. Most disappointing team, definitely Gorillas in this particular respect. Now we move on to a few more of the lesser, like, player performance team sort of awards, and more of the, I guess, this side of the camera sort of awards.
Yeah.
So we're talking about tournaments, we're talking about content creators, we're talking about talent, we're talking about all those various bits and pieces. And our first award will be our Tournament of the Year. Drake, who do you have as your second place?
Oh, well, I've still got Deepest Run here, mate. What's going on? We keep skipping ones.
Do you know what? I should have made better notes, really. Like,
you really didn't, did you? I've got all the pieces of paper, everything here.
And I just got my phone. That's
don't show the details.
Oh yeah, as if they're going to read that. Come on, dudes. So, Deepest Run. You were correct about that. So second place for. I mean, actually, to be fair, let's define what that means to be a deepest run, because technically it can be considered pretty objective in their own right. But
it can be. I think this is just a tier 2 team making a name for themselves, going deep against tier 1 caliber teams. That's kind of what I look at it. For my second place, I'm actually going to have a tied award only because the placement was the same, and I think you've probably got them.
Yeah.
Copenhagen Flames and Entropic at the major.
Yes.
Of course, they both went 9th to 11th. They went 2 and 3 in the main Swiss. You have a look at the Flames, 3-0 in new challenger stage, beating Astralis, Big, Heroic. They went into the new Legends. They beat Astralis. They beat Movistar Riders. Oh, no, sorry, I should step back. They beat Evil Geniuses and FaZe, and then weren't able to make it through. I think they had a game against Heroic again and NIP, which was quite close in the best of threes that didn't come forward. For Entropic as well, they beat Astralis, Movistar Riders, Heroic, and then even in the next stage, they beat Liquid and Gambit in the BO1s. 2-0 up. Didn't quite get that last best of 3 forward. It looked like it was going to happen. Didn't quite happen. But the placing's the same for these teams.
It's funny, actually. You mentioned Evil Geniuses in that particular regard. Now I'm thinking if we had the EU CIS and NA awards, we could have another team in the second place for the, for the most quality team of the year. That's by the by, though. But you're right. Like in terms of the big one, the major, that's obviously the pinnacle of the entire scene. So seeing those two teams make the run, that's part of the reason why I had them down for my personal pick as team of the year, because obviously they're the two teams that made that run. They made it in the big one. So seeing that one obviously being team of the year for my personal opinion, definitely the best run in a tier 1 tournament, because even when you take a look at the IEMs and the blasts and stuff, you never really find a tier 2 team that goes pretty deep in most of those
Except
tournaments.
for my first category.
Except for your first category, obviously, yes. There was that. But that's the thing. That's the exception to the rule rather than the rule itself.
No, there wasn't many others. My first one, when it comes to this one, is actually Gambit at IM Katowice early in the year. Now, at this point in time, Gambit was still considered a Tier 2 team. They came into this event in the play-ins, and they were 19th in the world. They'd won a lot of cups last year. There's no denying that at all. But they were all online, not really facing the highest level of caliber. They made a name for themselves. They came to this event, and I think that's when everyone knew these guys are Tier 1 caliber. Once they played this event, they're coming through, and my goodness, first place at Katowice is an incredible result. February 2021, so very early into the year. I think from that point onwards, Gambit really established themselves to be like, we're here to play in Tier 1.
See, I excluded Gambit from my personal nomination on this one, mostly because the fact I think that because of that tournament, they were basically graduated from Tier 2 to Tier 1, and for the rest of the year, they basically
without
were a Tier 1 team.
They did.
So for me personally, I just kind of look at that, and I don't see Gambit as a Tier 2 team anymore. I don't think they can really qualify for a lot of these awards. There's a reason why we haven't picked guys like Shiro as or Hobbit as like veteran or youngster or player of the year and such, but just because of the fact that you look at them, and obviously they've graduated from that Tier 2 space. So for me, obviously, I've just got like Copenhagen Flames and Entropic down as my second and first place for my PGL, obviously. So it feels like that's the right sort of way to approach things overall in that side. But no, credit to Gambit obviously for making that run. I guess that prior to that point, you could see them as a Tier 2 team.
I did. So that's why I kind of look at it.
Again, it's difference in philosophy in that particular respect. So now we can move over to tournaments and stuff like that of the year. Unless I'm missing something on this particular thing. No,
right,
I'm not. Definitely, Okay, best tournament of the year, Dweg. Second place nomination.
I'm going to go with Republic Season 2. Really impressed. I mean, we had the chance of actually working a few days of that event. And I think overall, the thing that impressed me the most, shoulder content with the players that was out there in the halftime breaks, before the games. Online as well. Like, to think an online cup was able to deliver it that kind of a way. Production, I thought, was very on point. Some of like the X-rays they had in the replays when there was like a wall bang or something like that. You like saw through the wall, things like that. The observing, we had like 3 observers on each game. You had the main observer replays and then the cinematic guy as well. I think just had a very good team behind them. Post-game interviews after every game that was played there. And the prize pool, top heavy, which isn't something we see from a massive of them. So it was 100k euro prize pool, 60 for first, 25 for second, 10k for third, and fifth for $5,000 for fourth. And then everyone else, no prize money. So make top 4, you get money.
I really want to see more from Republic, because they're my second place nomination as well, actually. They were stellar to work with when we got to work with them. And I really wish we got to do more with them this year. Hopefully we get to do some stuff with them next year as well. Just because, man alive, like they are basically the ESL of Tier 2. Like you mentioned,
they put money into it.
They put money into it. They had shoulder content, everything like that, interviews. They had basically the entire production assets of ESL just translated into a Tier 2 environment. And as you mentioned, online, very few TOs can do what they did online. Like not even my favourite tournament organiser to work with this year was Elisa. And not even they were able to pull off what they were able to do in the production side of things. Yeah. Because I see that and I look at that and I think to myself, like, that's absolutely incredible for the likes of Republic, and I think they've got a bright future ahead of them. I just hope that they don't burn out too quickly with that side.
Well, at least with their events, like they've done 2 this year, like they haven't done a massive amount of events, which is probably helping, just like not getting overloaded at all. But I think they're going to be the benchmark next year of like what a top event online looks like, and these guys are going to follow. I think as well they got some really good invites too. Like they were able to get VP, Copenhagen Flames. They got 5 top 20 teams and 9 top 30 teams, and they even had like the group stage like right before where there weren't a lot of teams that were known. There was like Entropic Prague in there. Eslor, Asuba, like a couple of, like, obviously the regional teams too, that come through in some of the lower ranks and have that sort of opportunity of rising up to go against the big dogs.
Absolutely. I mean, again, credit to them because they really have set the bar for the Tier 2 space, but they are my second place pick for a good reason. For you, it's also second place as well. So first place pick in terms of tournament of the year?
Yeah, I've gone for the V4 Future Sports Festival. And the reason for that is, obviously, LAN is the massive one. We have not seen many events on LAN in this year, so when we do get the taste of it, it's always nice to see. Shoulder content with the players was done. You know, there was a media day. I think the team intros were actually really well done when they were coming out on the stage, and they had, like, the whole visual aspect of them filming it and everything. What I liked is, even though it was a LAN event, didn't have a crowd, or maybe that's not what I liked, but they still were able to produce a LAN in this kind of an environment, and they had a proper talent team. Like, when we look at a lot of the online...
Including us.
What I mean by that is, like, when we have online, it's normally 2 casters and that's it. Where, at least at this event, there was a host, analysts, casters, rotating members. So because of that,
2 streams as well, by the way.
Yes, yeah. I mean, they had the Hungarian stream going on.
The English stream.
Yeah, so very well done in that respect. And I think as well, they had some, like, pretty decent teams there. Gambit and Entropica, like the big ones, maybe Big you can put in there as well. And then you had, like, everyone else that, you know, Movistar Riders, Fiends, Sinners. You had some towards the end that would, like, some surprises. Enterprise, Asuba put on some pretty good performances. So when I look at the caliber of teams, I look at, obviously, a €300,000 prize pool. It's a lot of money, so...
See, I was looking at that and I was thinking about that myself, but I was very tempted. I was very careful not to pick V4 just because it was a LAN.
Yeah.
And for me, I feel like had they done with the original intention of what it was to do, which was to host an arena-style event like the years in previous, like in 2019 and 2018 and 2019, then that probably would have been my tournament of the year most certainly. But the fact that they couldn't quite do it made me just sort of think about it a little bit more. And my first place was actually the We Play Academy League, which I think is a vitally important part of the landscape now. Like,
definitely.
Obviously, I'm not a big fan of franchise tournaments mostly, but this one is one of those exceptions to the rule for me personally because the fact that it's very focused on development and very focused on quality. And in terms of, like, quality of tournaments, you can't get much higher in the Tier 2 space than We Play and what they've been able to do. Even their Forge and Masters events back in the day, those are pretty respectable. In this Academy League context, they've definitely put out a competing product to Blast, which is a hell of a task and a hell of an achievement, I think, for those guys. So they deserve all the plaudits in the world due to that nature and down to that fact because they have created, like, a little niche for themselves and they've created a great tournament because of it.
Yeah, I mean, when I was growing up, obviously very much into traditional sports, Jay, and a lot of things I always used to like to see if I was going to the rugby or something beforehand, you'd have the under-21s, you know, a couple of hours earlier, and it'd always be good to kind of have a look at that, and I think that's what they're trying to incorporate here, the new generation, the younger teams, and we see that in football, rugby, there's always what you used to call it the under-21s or the academy, the scouts, the schools, whatever it is, and I think you do have to have that foundation for these young guys to prove themselves, to get put up into the top teams, to be able to get call-ups to other Tier 1 events if they want, or other Tier 1 teams if they wanted to sell them off. So, yeah, I think overall the whole environment, the style they have, the production value, and, of course, the concept. So,
absolutely.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I mean, if you want to doubt if Dweger's into development sports, remember he came to watch the National League with me for his birthday.
That's where it's at.
So, there you go. Football fanatic in his own right. But, yeah, those are our tournaments of the year. Congrats to all TOs involved. Our next category is, to make sure I'm not going to miss another one here, upcoming talent of the year. Yeah. So I actually wanted to do this one myself. I suggested this one because I think that there's a lot of talent in the casting space, especially in the Tier 2 scene, and it's very difficult for them to get noticed. Like, I think we kind of got lucky in terms of our development, and I guess it's not entirely luck. We definitely put the hard yards in, but in terms of who could have been in our position, it could have been anyone really. So I feel like it's very difficult for talent to get noticed. So I really wanted to make this a category because I want to highlight some of the guys that have really impressed me this year. I do want to start with an honorable mention though, because this is the EU and CIS awards, so our restriction is not to include North American talent. But my original silver medalist was Anthram, because he is solid and definitely worthy of a recommendation.
He's got some good energy
because he's got some good energy behind him. He's got the hype about him. He wouldn't have taken my first place because I think he's a bit rough around the edges when it comes to presentation. But I do feel like that's something that could be worked on, and probably next year he could be taking a particular position overall. Because I just wanted to give that quick honorable mention because I feel like he is a guy that deserves at least a mention in this particular category. So
yeah, with this one, like for you and I, Jay, we've been around for an incredibly long period of time. When I think about how many years ago. But when we were coming up, I don't think it was as competitive, right?
No,
there weren't as many casters. When I think back to our days, we always had the Dinkos and Hawkers of the world, Mitch, Dean, Scriv. We could probably throw like Weef in there, Seaside, Flakes. But when I look at that period, I think to myself, it was quite a close circuit where these days, even when I'm just watching some of the streams, there's honestly casters that I've never personally heard of before. A lot of guys trying to come through. It seems like there is a lot of events going on at the moment, which probably helps getting casters into it, doing some of the regional Swisses in some of these Tier 2 cups and getting their way in. So there is a lot of casters coming through, and I just want to say to them, if you weren't on our first and second, don't feel like, we fucking ate ya.
I should also add, we did put some specific restrictions in to make sure it's as close as as fair as possible. So we didn't pick our mates, for example. So we don't have. Sorry.
So if we picked you, we're not mates
sorry,
with you.
Scriv.
Is that what we're going with? We're not mates with you at all if we picked you.
Obviously, people that we're close with, obviously.
And I think as well, guys that have been around for a while, we're not going to include them as well, only because we're looking at that next generation, the guys that have really put the hard yards in the online era and started to have a lot of development.
Yeah. So give me your second place pick.
Yeah, well, not calling mates, of course. But I'm going to go with Retro, and the reason why I've gone with him is because a couple of times, if you've had something on, he's filled in with me, and I just feel like he's a very adaptive caster. He can come in, he can do the play-by-play. If maybe he's coming in to fill with you, then maybe he does a little bit more color. And I think that's important when you're down at sort of the lower end, is that you have to be able to work with everyone. I mean, when you and I were starting out, like, we were casting with so many different people, and I think you have to be able to adapt depending on who you're casting with. And for him, I think he's 18 years old. He's only really been casting this year and a little bit last year. So because of that, 16 A-tier events, 11 B-tier events. He got the opportunity of doing some of the RMR. I just think as a whole, he's a good package, and he's a very solid caster for someone that is so new.
Yeah, I mean, that's the key thing, right? Is the fact that he's new, and for that reason, I didn't quite put him into my top two, just because of the fact that I think he's still got a little bit of more of, again, as I mentioned with Anthran, it's that the fact that he's got the basis and he just needs to polish himself up. Retro's really good, though. I love working with Retro.
Time will tell with a lot of these guys.
Time will definitely tell, and I think that Retro is a guy that has time on his side, most certainly. And, when we was filling in for the Elisa Invitational, for example, I know that he had to jump in last second because another caster I was working with had his internet crap out.
Yeah.
And then for you, obviously, you've been sick on a couple of occasions.
Yeah,
and
whatever it's been.
Call him in when Scriv was not available. So Retro's always been a joy to work with. I have to concur with that particular second place. For me, my second place was a guy who's maybe been around a little bit longer than most other people, but I think he deserves it because this year he's had like a hell of a year so far, and that's Cody Casts. Yeah. And a special shout out to Cody, by the way, because today, as we're recording this, he's actually going in for heart surgery.
I hope he's all right.
So I hope he's doing all right. I hope he's going to get all the thumbs up in that respect. I hope nothing bad happens. I hope there's no complications. But in terms of his casting career, like, he's had a really breakout year. He did the Star Ladder RMR as part of the B stream. He came up to ESL for IEM 4 for the RMR. He's done a lot of big things in terms of the Tier 2 space. Not necessarily one of the guys that you see the most often, but when it comes to his polish, when it comes to his presentation, when it comes to his banter on the stream, like, he's one of the guys that has it all for me.
Hey, he brings character. I mean, I had a chat with him at the last Epic event, and you could just tell, like, talking to him, I mean, unfortunately, I think for him is because he works full time. I don't know how much progression is going to be there for someone like Cody, because I think he works at Twitch. I mean, sure, like, if a TO wants to pick him up for an event, he'll probably do it, but I think he may struggle moving forward if he really wants to grind up the ranks. Maybe, that's not part of the whole thing. Maybe it is. I'm not sure. But definitely for Cody, he's got a good accent behind him, and I think that's important, honestly. Being able to understand smoothly what the commentator is talking about. You do get some people where if English is kind of like their second language, it might be difficult to kind of understand the accent. I think for Cody, all round, a good caster.
Yeah, as well as that, he's really funny. He's really funny, Linus Casts.
Yeah.
Yes. First place for you, Dweg.
I'm going to go with X-Warrior. This is a guy that I didn't know a massive amount, if I'm going to be honest. And I've seen him in a couple of his show reels, and every now and then when I'm trying to do some research for myself when it comes to a game and I see the game going on, rather than watching the demo, I might go and pull up the stream and sort of see what's going on. I think for him, play-by-play, right, I think he's very good in the host role. I've seen him in some of the pre-game segments. and he knows how to sort of move on from different points, work with different casters, and good technical ability, I think, is the most important thing that he brings in the broadcast itself.
Well, it's funny you mentioned X-Warrior as your first place pick. He's my first place pick as well. Now, I've got a bit more hands-on experience when it comes to X-Warrior because we also do Valorant together on occasion, not all the time. But we started out working the start of the year in the Epic Ones, the smaller level events in terms of the online stuff, obviously when we were still in the middle of the pandemic. And I also got a chance to work with him very recently during a tournament called Icebox. So in terms of like hands-on experience, it might not necessarily be CS level, but the skills do definitely transfer over.
For a play-by-play as well, do you know what I mean? You can do that for sure.
Yeah, so that's why I'm doing Valorant myself. But in terms of like his polish compared to Epic One versus Icebox, I was so stunned with the progress he made. The technical ability that you mentioned, he didn't quite have that when he was doing the Epic events. But during the Icebox event, even though it was difficult as two play-by-players, I remember listening to him during his play-by-play segments, and I was like, damn, he's actually really, really solid. And I think he's got a really bright future ahead of him, no matter what game he works in.
Yeah, and that's always the benefit of a play-by-play. Like, I think for me, when I first started out, I was a little bit hybrid. Like, I did some play-by-play, but it definitely wasn't my strength. And I think if you do move your way into a color role, you do kind of get stuck in one specific game. And if you are a play-by-play that's got good technical ability and you've got the belief to grind and to really put the work in, moving from different titles is definitely a way forward. And I think for him, 13 A-tier events, I don't think we've seen him on the big stuff just yet, but I'm sure it will come.
I think he's due a big stuff call-up.
Yeah.
I think that at the very least he's due like a national championship in like ESL, for example, to get that little like way in. You know, maybe I'm not going to say like he's worthy of a B stream just yet, but he's definitely on the way there. He's on the precipice.
I don't know if in Valorant if he's done any hosting. Do you know if he's done hosting?
I'm afraid I'm not too familiar with his portfolio in Valorant as of yet.
Or in CS, because at least from what I've seen from him, like pre-game, it seems like he could actually do quite well in a host role. I don't know if he might even do hosting, and I could just be wrong.
Never know. Could be a host for ESL Challenger. That's a possibility.
Yeah, maybe.
I mean, you never know. Like, again, I think he's due a call up, and if you're looking for a guy out there and you're a tournament organizer, hire Pavlos for me personally. You know, that's what I'm going to say.
Don't even know his name.
Pavlos. Wow. So that picture didn't even know his name.
I haven't casted with him. I don't really know.
I'll forgive you on that front. I hope he will do too. Right. Content creator of the year, Dweg, the tier 2 scene in particular for this one. A lot of content creators to pick from, and I'll be honest, I've realised in this category I don't watch many content creators myself, so this one was a bit of a difficult one. So I guess probably to start with you in terms of your philosophy on this one. How do you look at this?
I think it's a no-brainer for me, only because I actually do watch a lot of content on YouTube, and the reason for that is obviously being a colour, you need to kind of get insight from different people, you know, judge some ideas, and I think there are certain people out there that I can look at, and I know that I'm just not getting trolled, do you know what I mean? Like, I'm actually getting some proper analytics from, and I'm going to start with a small UK YouTuber that goes by the name King_T. King T, I believe is his name. He actually does storyline-based stuff, and I'm sure you would actually really like that.
Have you not sent this guy to me already?
Yeah.
Like, what?
I discovered him a little bit earlier in the year, and what he does is, it's actually quite cool. He stands up, he's got like a green screen behind him, and he might have like a map or players behind him, whatever it is, and he looks at new prospects and roster changes. He discusses a few tier 1 teams, but mainly tier 2. I remember one video I was watching on like Skade. He goes through like the individual roles of each player, and it is much more storyline driven, or rather than just like brute force analysis. And I think he's quite small, but still he does some very good work, and check him out, because I think he deserves a lot more viewership than what he actually gets.
I mean, you've already intrigued me with that storyline side of things, because I'm very curious to see how that works out. I've definitely, I mean, I've been experimenting with like storyline content myself as of late, so actually nothing published as of right now, but in terms of where it could go on that front, like, he seems like he might have a decent basis for that.
He's good.
I'm excited to see where that goes. Unfortunately, my picks are not quite as original as yours, but I do want to highlight Heku, the CIS. Is she Latvian? I think she is.
Latvian or Estonian? It might be. No, I think it is Latvian.
No, yeah, I think it's Latvian. But she's a Latvian interviewer and content creator who's been doing a lot of like tier 2 interviews as of late, and she's been finding a lot of great players, a lot of great individuals and personalities in the tier 2 space. Very short, very digestible sort of interviews that give a lot of insight overall. And as well as that, being a girl from CIS as well, she can also bring
the
some of the
CIS
CIS players
that we never get.
We never get to hear because they don't get to speak English. So she's got a massive market of potential and a lot of like insights that she could bring to the international space.
Yeah, well, she was doing some of the stuff for WePlay, I think, for the Academy League. And then I actually saw her do a video. It may have been with like Elian and could have been Hooch as well. And obviously it was in Russian, but it had like the subtitles.
Yeah.
And it's like, mate, this is what I've been looking for, because all these, not all of them, but the majority of CIS players we have in Tier 2 just do not speak a good enough level of English that when you actually get them in English, you're getting like the pigeon English. Do you know what I mean? You're not getting the full explanation. And then when the subtitles come in on Russian, you're getting everything. So yeah, she's definitely doing well.
Yeah, I'm a big fan, really big fan. So shout out to Heku. Your first place pick.
Yeah, Multi Okers, another small-time UK CS:GO.
So this guy's all about the rising talents, right here. Like, you know, like rising sports, rising national league stuff, rising teams,
I know it all.
Rising content creators. Because I've never heard of these guys myself personally. So give me some more. Give me the lowdown.
Yeah, so he does more analytical stuff. I think the one element that he brings is the production value is very good. So there was one video I was looking at, and it was basically talking about Sanji to Flit on VP. So yeah, okay, it's Tier 1 teams, but he also does some Tier 2 stuff. And basically, he's like in connector, and he's like following the guy. And you know, like, he can make cam paths. Basically, as you go into that window at the end of con on overpass, in sort of like the top right, as you go through there with the camera, it goes back to T-spawn. And it's little things like that where the editing value is very good on the videos. He does a lot of like shorts for nade lineups and things like that. 6 to 10 minute videos explaining certain players, rounds, setup. So if you're someone that likes analytical stuff, like a Launders or maybe a Nard out here, he actually does some very good stuff. And I think for him, he's done about 50 videos this year, almost reached 100,000 views. I think he's still under 1,000 subscribers. Check him out. He does some good videos.
Yeah, credit to him. Real big fan. I mean, I will be a real big fan.
Check him out after.
Like yeah, I definitely will. So we'll get to see how that plays out. For me, my first place pick is, again, not that original. I was umming and ahhing whether this counts, just because of the fact that Hawker is definitely a Tier 1 content creator these days with 45,000 subscribers. But I also feel like his frequency of posting kind of knocks him down a peg for me. So I guess he kind of just barely fit into the bracket.
Stealing it a bit.
I'm cheating a little bit, I'll admit, on that front. But again, like when it comes to content creators, Hawker's the one guy I watch the most probably because he is so polished. He knows exactly what to say, how to say it, when to say it, and how to make the point overall. He's got great ideas. Like, for example, he's talking about, there's this one video I like really heavily. He lays out a chart of ESCA, Mount MDL or Premier players and tries to chart, see who can be the big guys. He noticed a pattern to show that Mezzi could be a top player.
The graphics are good.
Yeah, there it is.
You know,
all the stats and stuff like that. He marks it out, makes a great point with visuals and narration, and that probably is one of the things that's the hardest thing to do in content, especially in analysis content. So again, the thing that keeps it back for me is the fact that he doesn't post as often as I'd like him to. But again, you know, that's definitely a small little, like, you know, caveat point.
I mean, it's the same for me. Like, I do love watching a lot of demos and doing the analytical stuff, but finding time can be difficult. I mean, for you and I, we're working so often that we don't actually get a lot of spare time, and I think there were portions where I was getting some of my videos out, and it's just difficult to try and keep it up. I know for Hawker, he probably doesn't do as much work, like at least broadcast days as we do, but still, when you're doing those higher tier events, you're spending more days doing the prep. So I'm sure for him, struggling to have an upload schedule while being a commentator full time, it's not easy, and only few people can do it.
Yeah, absolutely, and he's one of the guys that definitely can, well, mostly do it. Again, the upload schedule needs to have a little bit of work, but credit to him, he's working on that front. So love to see that on his part. Those are your content creators, and our final category will be the best kit of the year.
I've got some good ones.
Here's the thing, right? Like, I don't have a great visual eye for anything. Like,
I do love the kits.
This is my wardrobe right here, red and black.
It's looking all right.
Do you know, it fits me. It fits me. When it fits,
doesn't matter about the color.
It suits me most certainly.
Yeah.
Like, you know, but in terms of like jerseys, no one really rocks red and black that often, and even then, it usually looks pretty boring.
Extreme?
It looks pretty boring. So, you know, and even then, Extreme doesn't count anyway because they're not even a team anymore. So I'm going to dismiss
the jersey
those guys.
still counts.
Wow, give me your second place pick, Dwight.
Yeah, I'm actually going to go with Anonymo, the polls coming into this one. Now, we'll get the logo or the little jersey up on screen. But basically, Jay, it's very clean, very simple. It's sort of like a dark blue, navy color, and they've got a big A towards the bottom of the jersey, which points to then the Anonymo logo as well. So it's like the A pointing to the logo. Just very clever, all in all. I think it looks really nice and very easy to represent straight away. They're an Anonymo player.
Yeah. I mean, it kind of works. It's like that in the is it in Tropic they have the Kings thing?
Oh, I love that.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Like it's a sponsor, obviously, but it shows that they're like Kings.
Yeah,
so like having that little centre,
especially when you're like a top 10 team, it's like you can have that.
Absolutely. For me, I did not go for originality. I just went for more of a colour pattern. For me, I went for scale because I like the little combination.
Yeah, the blue,
of the blue and the white, the lightness of it. It feels definitely much more. I don't know, a bit pleasing. It does look a little bit washed out, which is one of the reasons why it's second place for me. But I feel like it's definitely much better than what we see from a lot of teams, which is just like solid colour, sponsor logos,
standard stuff.
You know, and it has a bit more flair to it.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Nemega as my first one. Unfortunately for Nemega, the team hasn't really found as much success this year as they have last year. Their kit though, banging, absolutely top notch.
Didn't we nominate them last year as well?
For kit? You reckon?
I think we did.
Maybe. I don't reckon I did. Maybe you did. I have to look back at the last episode.
I might have to look back. See, well researched, but doesn't even know what the nominations were from last year.
Well, why would I? I mean, everything changes in Tier 2.
Exactly. Well, for me, I went with my first place.
Hang on. I haven't even described mine,
okay.
mate.
Fine. Sure. Go for it.
What I love is it's just, there's a lot of wildness going on with his jersey, right? You've got like the red, black, or the red, blue, and the white. They've got like a hard Legion skull kind of thing going on towards the bottom. And also, just, I think it's above the Nemega logo, they've got their alias on the front, which you do not see very often at all. And it feels like it looks like it's been like flick painted on, like the whole jersey, just with the color scheme. It's just something I have not seen before. And I think it's, a bit edgy, bit out there. I like it.
Credit. I mean, I guess so. We'll see how how Nemiga's shirt will fare up against the Copenhagen Flames, who are my personal pick, which is a bit more of an advanced design for me personally. I'm a big fan of the colour. Like that little like dark blue sort of purple borderline.
It's just simple, isn't it?
It's very simple, but it also looks so satisfying to see. So I'm a big fan of how they've worked in with that one. I mean, it's definitely like contrasting as well to their regular colours of like orange and such.
From the originals,
and it works really well with the orange when they have those little outlines and those little bits and pieces which do have the regular branding on it.
Yeah, not bad at all. Well, there we go. I think we speed run through that.
I love it how it was a bit of a quick one actually. I love it how like we've done like the most jokey category as the last one. Honestly, we probably should have built into like the big stuff.
Yeah,
really.
could have done.
Yeah, we'll do that next year perhaps. I don't know, but that is it for the Tier 2 EU and CIS awards.
It's been good fun.
Yeah, it's been good fun indeed.
I think what I really enjoy about this show is obviously the recognition of some of these guys would love to have it, and of course it just changes. Like if we had a Tier 1 awards, we'd be giving so many awards consistently to certain players, certain teams. Where with Tier 2, because it is so fluctuating, I think you do get different sort of eyes on, and because Tier 2 expands so many teams and players, you've also got a wide category to choose from. So yeah, it's been very good fun.
Indeed, it has been. It has been a very difficult task as well to pick as many as we have done so far. There's a lot of squads involved, and if you haven't seen your favourite team, player, caster, whatever it is you wanted to see in these awards, and remember, there is a lot of competition out there in the Tier 2 space, and they'll have to work even harder to make it happen in 2022. But for 2021, that's it from us.
Yeah.
It's been a fun year so far, Dwayne. Coming out of the pandemic as well, at least starting to see the tail end of it and everything. Yeah. LAN's coming back. We're traveling the world again. We got to do our first studio and LAN events and such, Blake. So a very important year for us and everything.
Yeah, and for all the viewers as well, like if you had someone that maybe we didn't select, or you had a certain category that maybe you think we've been out there too much, let us know. Get us out on Twitter, all the social medias, put it in the comment section of what you'd maybe like to see if you had an extra category, maybe, for any of the viewers. If there was something that we missed out on, let us know. But yeah, this whole year's been very fun, and I think definitely we'll be back for the awards show next year, and hopefully with some even more juicy subjects.
Indeed, we'll have to wait until next year for that time, but until 2022, until that period, we have to bid you all adieu. So I'm in the Eternal J, my co-host, I guess, not commentator.
Almost got you.
not commentary in this one. I guess it can be close enough, but my co-host has been Dwayne Winner. Thank you so much for watching and for listening, and we'll see you back here next year for even more Tier 2 CS. Until that point, though, good night and goodbye.